My name is Stephen Constable, and this is my informative speech, and this is my note card. In the online banking world, there's a problem known as double spending. Imagine if I were to give you $1. That means I would no longer have that dollar to give. But in the online world, that dollar is digital, which means it can be copied and duplicated. If I can trick the bank into thinking I haven't spent that dollar, then I can spend that dollar over and over and over again in multiple places. Bitcoin was revolutionary on its release, providing a system in preventing double spending. So today we'll talk about what a Bitcoin is, what are some of the components of the Bitcoin, and how those components work to prevent double spending. I've been following internet cryptocurrencies for the past decade now as they develop. And hopefully after this speech, you'll have a better understanding of how cryptocurrency was so, specifically Bitcoin, was so revolutionary in preventing double spending. So first, let's talk about what a Bitcoin is. A Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, and the most concise definition I could find was from blockgeeks.com. Quote, an internet-based medium of exchange which uses cryptographic functions to conduct financial transactions. Essentially, Bitcoin is its own independent financial medium. It is not tied to the dollar or anything else, gold or silver, and its value is completely derived from supply and demand. It's also known as peer-to-peer, which means you can directly send a Bitcoin to anybody else on the system. You don't have to go through banks, you don't have to go through any third parties, you don't have to give out any credit card information or billing information. And this helps keep it very anonymous and private. So now that we know what the Bitcoin is, let's talk about some of the components of the Bitcoin. So the first major component of the Bitcoin are the miners. Miners are the ones that bring Bitcoins into the existence. They use CPUs to process very complex cryptographic algorithms to produce these Bitcoins. In Bitcoin's white paper, quote, the steady addition of a constant amount of new coins is analogous to gold miners expending resources to add gold to circulation. Just like the miners here are spending CPU resources to bring Bitcoins into circulation. Miners are competing for Bitcoins by creating what are known as blocks. Every block is a transaction made within the Bitcoin system. They produce these blocks and add them onto the recent block, onto the previous blocks, chaining them together, creating what is known as the blockchain. The blockchain is the entire ledger of all transactions ever made in Bitcoin since its inception. Miners only ever use the longest blockchain, and because of that, they're only rewarded for making the blockchain longer. Now, to allow all the miners to have a fair shot at getting the next longest blockchain, or the next block for the longest blockchain, they use what's called a decentralized model. In a decentralized model, the ledger is public, which means everybody has access to it, and they all have a way to independently verify its integrity. This is in contrast to a centralized model, where the ledger is solely kept by one party, and it's their sole responsibility to verify its integrity and to keep track of all transactions ever made. The centralized model is more susceptible to double spending, because in this model you only have to deceive one party to thinking your transaction is legitimate. Whereas in the decentralized model, you have multiple points of verification integrity. So now that we've gone over some of the components of the Bitcoin, let's look at a scenario in which they all come together to prevent double spending. Let's say you have a bad miner and they're looking to commit double spending. They're looking to commit fraud. First, they have to initiate the first transaction. So we have block 50. They make the first transaction here. It goes out to the network to be verified and turned into another block by the rest of the miners on the network. So they'll be starting on block 51. The bad miner looks to go and make a second illegitimate transaction. So they begin working on their own block 51, creating their own blockchain. Now this transaction, because the second one came afterwards, when the miners on the network finish block 51 and they go to look at this second transaction, they will never see it as legitimate because mathematically it would be impossible. They've already traced where these amounts have gone. And so they will begin continuing to work on the legitimate blockchain, making it longer, while the bad miner is stuck working on their own illegitimate blockchain. This has two flaws for the bad actor. First, within the network, they have vastly more resources for CPUs to continue making this blockchain longer because miners are only interested in using the longest blockchain, while the sole bad actor is limited in his resources, and so his blockchain is never going to get longer. Also, because it is going to be a shorter blockchain and will never be accepted, it will also stand out when looking to verify its integrity because you'll not be able to verify it with the legitimate blockchain. It'll stand out. So that's one scenario of how these components work within the Bitcoin system to prevent double spending. So again, this is how the components work, and these were necessary in allowing Bitcoin's system to revolutionize the way we think about preventing double spending and doing online commerce. Again, we looked at what a Bitcoin was, and we looked at how, using the decentralized model, miners created the blockchain to verify the integrity of the system independently to keep from double spending. Lastly, I'd like to leave you with a quote from Forbes magazine in a recently published article called "Decentralized Cryptocurrencies Are the Future." They said, quote, "Like the internet broke the information stranglehold, the blockchain will break many economic choke points." Thank you.
All right, you're at 7:46.